took us prisoner in your fight to be free. Little white lies, little white lies, little white lies, little white lies. Keep on telling me.
All right. Hey, thanks for joining me. This is John Kane, and this is Let's Talk. And we've got a special program that it's actually a recorded program instead of our live program, so we won't be doing calls today. But I do have a very special program. But before I get into exactly what we're going to talk about, I do have to talk about a campaign that we've just started. It's called More Than Mics. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to raise money to finish our studio build out that we're well into at WBAI. We're doing it now through May 1st. We're looking for 200 listeners that'll make a donation of $50 or more, or less for that matter, to reach our needed goal to finish our new studio. Now, you guys don't see the studio for the most part, except those of you who watch us as we do Facebook live stream, and then you do see the studio. And I guarantee if you watch us on Facebook, you will see a marked improvement with the new studio, but I also guarantee you're going to hear a better sound quality. We've got we soundproofed it. We're trying to upgrade the mics. Look, we've been broadcasting for over 60 years. Some of the equipment that we're using is just that old. Yeah, many of us are that old too, but so we're trying to raise this money, and you can do so. You can go right to our normal pledge line. You can go to 516-620-3602. You can ask our operators or tell those operators that you want to make a donation for our More Than Mics campaign, or you can go online. You can go to give2wbai.org. That's www.give2wbai.org. And then follow the prompts. You can find the More Than Mics campaign that we're doing now through May 1st. And this is almost a separate little fundraiser we're doing before we get into our spring fund drive. It's not for any other purpose than specifically so we can finish the studio build out that we're in the process of doing. So I got to put that out there. All right, now let me get right into it. My guest today is William Camarcaro. He is a Venezuelan activist, the co-founder and coordinator of the Alberto Lovera Bolivarian Circle in New York. He's an artist, a radio host here on WBAI, as a matter of fact. He's an activist in New York City and senior research fellow at the Council on Hemispheric Affairs. That's a COHA in Washington, D.C. And I've got William joining us here specifically to basically offer the counter narrative that you're not hearing on any of the mainstream media, including much of the media that's on the left. So I want to talk about Venezuela. I want to clear the air. Now, William is not only Venezuelan himself, but he has recently returned from Venezuela, so he can give us a firsthand commentary on what he saw, on what he's experienced, and of course what he knows about Venezuela in general. So I want to welcome William Camarcaro to Let's Talk. Thank you so much, William, for joining us.
Thank you very much for inviting me, for having me, and yes, I just came from Venezuela a few weeks ago, so. Just, ask me question about it, about what's going on over there.
Well, first off, the overarching narrative that even the left media, part of the media, the right and left of the mainstream media, keeps indicating is the lack of legitimacy that Nicolas Maduro has as the elected president of Venezuela. So there's that. Then of course there's the other narrative that the Bolivarian revolution started by Hugo Chavez and carried through past his death with the current president Nicolas Maduro has somehow brought this dreaded socialistic dream to kill the Venezuelan economy. I know, I have a certain amount of knowledge of what's been happening there. I also know that there is a very race-based conflict, a class-based conflict that exists there. And I'd like you to comment, specifically, first off, before we even get into this guy that the United States and others are trying to prop up in terms of this Juan Guaido, I want you to talk to us about the legitimacy of the process and the legitimacy of Nicolas Maduro as the president of Venezuela.
Yes, first of all, President Nicolas Maduro won an election where in May 20, where we have a big number of international observers all over the planet. The problem with that election is the Venezuelan opposition didn't want to participate. Some sector of the opposition participated, but other sector of the opposition that were paying attention to the State Department and the Trump administration didn't participate.
So is it your sense? Is it your sense that part of the reason they didn't participate was so they could somehow attempt to disqualify and raise a question about the legitimacy of the election because they knew they were going to lose to Maduro?
No, they basically President Maduro is completely legitimate. The problem is that we cannot blame him because the right-wing group didn't participate. They didn't participate because they were paying attention to the State Department. And it's because United States doesn't want any elections in Venezuela, even if those elections can be won by the right wings. Because what they want really is a coup d'etat. What they want is really to destroy the establishment that has been built for the last 20 years. And the only way to do it is through a coup d'etat.
Right.
If the right wing win an elections, they will not be able to destroy the institutions because the institution will react, will defend themselves, and that will be a very long process. So that's why in every election that we have last year, the State Department was opposing, was showing opposition, and was telling the opposition to not participate. And now they are saying, ironically now they say that those elections were not democratic, those elections were not legitimate, when from the beginning they were calling to the right wing to not participate in the elections.
All right, so that answers the question kind of about the election issue. But now let's talk a little bit about the economic issues because the mainstream narrative out there is that socialism has destroyed the economy in Venezuela. When and it's funny, I was just listening to a program on NPR the other day, and they were talking about why socialism would be such a hard sell in the United States, and what they were saying is that the wealthy and the elite class, the wealth-based anarchy or aristocracy in the United States would simply send all their money offshore. They would refuse to allow themselves to be harmed because the wealthy elite are the ones who are most damaged when you try to help poor people, especially if you're going to try to do it, through socialism. And that is really almost from the beginning, including when Hugo Chavez nationalized the oil companies and pushed out Shell and Exxon and Chevron and the like. It seemed like there was a certain level of sabotage that was taking place by homegrown by some of the Venezuelan people that had been that was doing quite well under the capitalist system that and the exploitive system that multinationals, including U.S. companies, were putting them under. So it seems to me that if you looked at where most of the damaging part of the economy came from, it didn't come from socialism. It came from both the United States with some of the not just sanctions, but other things that they had done specifically to damage their economy. I'm not even going to get into the fuel prices. I'm just talking about what policies both the United States and U.S. allies had imposed against Venezuela, and again how much they were working in concert with some of the wealthy class that exist along almost racial lines in Venezuela.
Well, first of all, it's obvious that the United States wants to destroy the Venezuelan revolution. And this desire starts from the beginning, 20 years ago. The United States organized a coup d'etat against President Chavez in 2002. Then they organized a so-called oil strike between 2002 and 2003. And since that happened, we have been facing different forms of confrontation and sabotage from the United States. Now, why this difference, why this confrontation is happening between United States and Venezuela? It's because, first of all, President Chavez was opposed to the free trade agreement. The free trade agreement that was uh, promoted by the Bush Jr., that was promoted by Bush Jr., was defeated in Marta Viner in Chile, and was President Chavez that was leading the confrontation against the free trade agreement. Then we have the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, that was promoted by Obama. The administration of Obama for 8 years was spending, was traveling all over Latin America promoting the TPP and was unable to implement the TPP in the region because, again, Chavez. But in this moment, in this occasion, when Latin America had the UNASUR, the Union of South American Countries, that was opposed. Most of the countries that were in the UNASUR were confronting the TPP. So Obama was unable to implement the TPP. So it's basically big corporate interests, USA corporate interests in the region were unable to use the entire region for their corporate interests because Venezuela was leading confrontation against the free trade agreement, the different trade agreement. That's one reason for United States or for the State Department and the Pentagon have this confrontation with Venezuela. The other reason is that undoubtedly Venezuela has a huge amount of resources. Venezuela has the biggest oil reserve on the planet, one of the biggest reserve of gas, gold, diamond, also uranium, and Turon. Turon is the mineral that's going to replace uranium in the future. But in fact, Venezuela has more thorium than oil. Venezuela has 3 times more thorium than oil.
Well, and so the question that always arises when people do look at the natural resources that Venezuela has is how can such a country so rich in natural resources be struggling economically? And I think that's what I'd like you to address.
I'm trying to get to the point. The point is that so the confrontation with United States, that's why United States want to destroy the Bolivarian Revolution, because one is political, another one is because all the natural resources. So then the Obama administration initiated what is called the fracking. Fracking is a technique that is very old. It was born in 1945 and never was used as has been used in the last 10 years, 12 years. And it's Obama that initiated the use of fracking to get oil. Never was used before in the it's used right now because it's a technique that creates a lot of pollution, destroy the water, basically destroy water. That is something very elemental for the human being. So they start to use fracking, and in the beginning of the Obama administration, the oil industry in the United States was producing 4 million barrels per day. When Obama was ending his government, its period, so 8 years, the United States was producing more than 11 barrels per day.
11 million barrels.
11 million barrels per day. So that 11 million barrels per day, together with the millions of barrels of oil per day that are the Saudi Arabians were pumping to the international markets as a request from the Obama administration, overflow the market and destroy the price of the oil. So the price of the oil plumbed from $100 to $20 per barrel. That's one of the measures that the United States took to destroy the economy. Remember that they did the same thing in Chile. In Chile was the copper. They took all the reserve of copper and they just overflowed the market with their own copper reserve, and then the price of the copper collapsed to destroy the economy in Chile.
Right.
And this time they did the same thing with the oil. That's
Well,
one
and
thing.
let's and I guess to get even into a little bit more detail with the oil, there's a couple other things going on here. Obviously, the market can fluctuate a barrel of oil, and it can hit some lows, and an economy like Venezuela that depended so much on oil revenue becomes hurt by it even more significantly than other more diversified economies. And what many economies or what many people in these industries do is they can either bank up money or they can use credit lines to cover cover losses or some of the leaner times. But the problem is that the United States made it more difficult because Chavez was trying to pull away from the IMF and start another banking consortium, so to speak. This was undermined by the United States. So the ability for Venezuela to cover some of the dips in oil price per barrel became very, very difficult. And then on top of that, if you look at more recently, then it goes to even a more egregious action on the part of the United States, because they've literally not allowed their sales of PDVSA oil through their American subsidiary Citgo to receive funds back to literally get paid for the oil that they sell in the United States.
Venezuela, first of all, yes. So what I want to make clear is that the crisis of the prices of the oil is not something accidental. It was something created by United States in order to initiate the destruction of the economy in Venezuela. Mm-hmm. Then we had the sanctions. We had Obama passing this so-called decree declaring Venezuela an unusual and extraordinary threat. Mm-hmm. That decree that has been used by Donald Trump to pass several sanctions against the economy in Venezuela. So they have been able, through that decree, to frost a big number, billions of dollars of Venezuela all over the bank system and international bank system. They have been able, through that decree that was passed by the Obama administration, that being able to also to sanction all the people that want to make a business with Venezuela.
Well, and I guess it's got to be clear there that some of these sanctions are affecting things like medicine, not just food.
Oh yes,
but things like medicine and very much needed resources. So and it affects it through the banking industry and through the ability to transfer funds through electronic transfer of funds. So it isn't that that Venezuela doesn't even have the money. They haven't been able to access their own money. Exactly. Then you throw on top of that the allies of the United States, like Great Britain, who won't even let Venezuela access their own gold reserves that they have in the UK.
Venezuela has no access to his own money.
It's crazy.
Fact, the money that belongs to the Venezuelan state right now is used by the State Department to arm guerrilla groups against the Venezuelan government in Colombia. So they are using the Venezuelan own money to arm terror groups in Colombia against the Venezuelan government.
Well, and then they put up this big ruse about trying to bring in supplies, needed supplies. I know Maduro has said, look, we'll allow the Red Cross, to bring in needed medical supplies and stuff like that. But we're not going to allow a government that is cheating us out of our own money pretend that they're sending humanitarian aid into our country when we know that it's masking essentially and that it's all part of the coup d'état that they're trying to commit against Venezuela.
Yeah. So they for example, and it is very difficult right now, thanks to all the sanctions that have been passed by the Trump administration and Obama, of course, as part of this game. We have been facing problems in Venezuela. We can see people that don't have that dialysis because there is no medicine, mm-hmm. because there is no, for example, medicine again for people that have cancer. It's very difficult to give them some kind of treatment. There are basic needs that are that you cannot get in Venezuela right now, thanks to the sanctions.
And again, it's
So
not because
completely-
Venezuela can't afford to pay, but even I've even heard that there's been equipment deliveries that have been held up, like you said, dialysis machines and the like, because this is all a part of the United States, and they want to pretend that they have this humanitarian interest in what's happening to the economy, when the United States, and again, I don't want to leave out the elite class of Venezuela, are specifically and purposefully trying to hurt the economy and the lives, especially of the middle and lower middle class of Venezuela, and of course the poor people.
Yeah, and the cynical thing here is that they are creating, United States is creating a humanitarian crisis in Venezuela through all those sanctions, and then they portray themselves as the saviors of the Venezuelan people, when in reality they are trying to suffocate and destroy the economy. So we can see, for example, in certain areas in Venezuela that, for example, certain prices of the food are getting extremely expensive. But at the same time, everybody knows this because the mainstream media is all the time talking about all those issues, all these so-called crisis, and never mention that it's created by United States. But at the same time, people are looking for measures to confront all these sanctions and all the difficulties that have been created by United States and Venezuela.
Well, and again, I think it's really important that people understand that when you talk about inflation, and you talk about the way to ruin a currency or to drive up the prices of things, there's the United States has a big role in this thing, but there's also the people who have controlled business in Venezuela as far as the market forces go. Again, go back to the wealthy, whiter Venezuelans who, I saw recent pictures. They show, these guys dining in their extravagant shopping malls. And they don't like to show those pictures because they'd rather show, some poor people eating out of a dumpster or something like that, because they don't want to show how the affluent people in Venezuela still live, even as they play a role in driving up the price of the basic necessities, because those are predominantly the business people. Well,
there is right now in the Congress a packet of several sanctions against Nicaragua. Mm-hmm. And right now there is also, just a few weeks ago, there was a meeting between 10 lawmakers from Bolivia and Miami with Marco Rubio, requesting to United States government to pass several sanctions against the government of Evo Morales. So this was initiated in the beginning by all these white, middle class, high class Venezuelan people that are opposed again, or that are working against the Bolivarian Revolution. They came to the United States, they work here, they do lobby all the way in the Congress of the United States, until they were capable to get those people that wanted to implement all those measures, all those sanctions against the Venezuelan people. They are spending billions of dollars in the Congress of the United States to impose those sanctions against the Venezuelan people. That's why you can see someone like Marco Rubio so happy and sending on, almost every day 5-6 tweets against the Venezuelan government, talking all the time in the television against Venezuela, because all of them basically they have been paid by the white rich people that are controlling the market in Venezuela.
Well, and it's got to be said that clearly when you look at who is the most negatively impacted by a socialist revolution, and clearly socialism is about evening the leveling the playing field when it comes to economics. It's about making sure that there's a more even distribution of the wealth of a nation necessary in this case. So it is the wealthy people who feel most in jeopardy, even though and we could argue whether it was wise or not, but Chavez didn't go after. He didn't go and take resources. He didn't take down the wealthy elite. But they they use their money and they use their influences in other countries that were right leaning to do everything they can to keep going an opposition agenda and to try to undermine everything that Chavez and now Maduro is trying to do.
Yes, we have, for example, there are a bunch of videos. For example, Julio Borges, who is one of the leaders of the opposition, ultra right wing, and he basically is celebrating the sanction and saying, so when we talk to the American people about the possibility to sanction PDVSA, the oil industry, they said to us that was impossible. Well, we can see now, after years of be talking with them, that it's possible because they are sanctioning around PDVSA, the oil industry. They celebrate publicly the sanctions in the Venezuelan TV. So, of course, the United States now, there is a video where Donald Trump said basically that we will help them to take power, but we would like to get for our oil industry, we would like to get for them 50% of the Venezuelan oil reserve.
Well, and I guess that gets back to it. I mean, if the United States could have their way and they could somehow topple the Maduro government and pull off this coup d'état, it's not the way that they would see their way through to try to impact the economy there would be to throw in is for the United States and a bunch of multinational corporations to take over their oil industry. And that's not going to put more money back in the Venezuelan coffers, but it's going to pad the wallets of an awful lot of people who are willing to work with them. And so when you look at this thing and you say, well, the solution to this socialist experiment that Chavez has undertaken is to what? To sell off, the national resources of Venezuela. I mean, so others can profit, and that's exactly what the United States is looking at.
Well, I think that basically, in the case of Venezuela, well, I think almost in every case, following is that this small group of people that they have all the resources and control all the resources. They don't want to share what the country has.
Right.
They want everything from themselves, and they want to be able to control everything.
And they had it that way before.
They had it before.
Yeah.
And still, even with Chavez, because Chavez, when the so-called oil strike happened, that happened because they control the oil industry.
Right.
And even Chavez was complaining. Chavez said, it is incredible that I'm the president of Venezuela, but I cannot control of the oil industry because it's run by people that they said to the state how much money they will provide to the state to run the entire country.
Right, right.
And it's also something that a lot of people don't know is that when the so-called oil strike happened, Chavez, we have in the oil industry 36,000 executives, 36,000 workers, 18,000 were executives.
Yeah, that's what you call passive employees. These are the ones who just make money and don't contribute anything back in.
But all of those 80,000 executives were white.
I'm sure.
A big majority of them. There was not a single black person there.
Yeah. Hey, look, William. I'm going to take a break here, and we'll come back. And I want to talk about some of the race issues, but I also want to talk about, the common narrative that's out there about how much support, say, this Juan Guaido has, or the opposition, and how many people are dead set against Maduro or the Bolivarian revolution. I want to talk about all that. So we'll do that when we come back. Let me take a break. We'll go out on a song. I'm going to do another Murray Porter song, and then we'll come back after a few minutes. We'll just take a brief break.
Thank you.
Now you say you're sorry. It's not what you say, it's what you do. Tell us you'll do better, but it's hard to believe in you. The day has finally come, told the world that you were wrong. Far too many have passed on now. When it's sorry, took away our children, stole our mother's love, laid waste to our traditions. Wasn't that enough? Separated from our culture so many years, so alone, with no mothers and no fathers, in a world so far from
All right, come back now. That's again, that's Sorry Enough. That's by Murray Porter, and I opened up with Little White Lies because, man, we're fed quite a few of those, and so I want to make sure that people understand just what we face with again. A lot of stuff is race-based. I think it's really important that people realize Hugo Chavez was his background, his ethnic background involved. He was part indigenous. He was part black, and this is something that was a stark change from the white powerful class that had been ruling Venezuela. And ushered in so much U.S. control and U.S. multinational control of their economy and that kind of thing. So I want to get into that a little bit because look, this white nationalism and all this race-based nationalism that has been essentially sweeping the world. Has been Europe, places like France, and even the Brexit in the UK is based on this. Certainly Donald Trump. We see it now in South America with what's happening in Ecuador and Brazil, and this has been the hallmark of this of the opposition to Chavez. This was what was responsible for the attempted coup d'état supported by the United States back in 2002 that failed due to the major popular resistance of the Venezuelan people. So I think it's important that people understand that this isn't just a failed political strategy. There are people who are divided right along race lines, and you see that even with the opposition protests that oftentimes are finding the darker skinned, if not black people specifically, to target for their hatred and animosity and violence. This is what we've been seeing. But I wanted to get right back into understanding where because what we hear in the mainstream media is that 90% of the Venezuelan oppose Maduro now, and 90% of Venezuelans support Juan Guaido, and I don't hear that when I talk to anybody who has any real working knowledge or the word from the street in Venezuela is different than that. So I want to pose that back to you. If you were to break down right now, without even getting into the individuals of Maduro versus Guaido, just the idea. Who still supports what percentage of the population still supports this idea of a socialist revolution that has tried to even the income and the wealth distribution across Venezuela versus what is the percentage that opposes it? If you can give me some numbers there, I would greatly appreciate it.
Well, I can say that in terms of the President Maduro, I would say that despite all the economic sabotage, despite all the blockade that Venezuela is suffering right now, you don't see big demonstration on the street against the president, against the government. You see that in Colombia, you see that in Argentina, even in Ecuador.
You're seeing it in Brazil to some extent, sure.
In Brazil, exactly, but you don't see it in Venezuela. Despite all the huge mainstream propaganda against the Venezuelan government, you don't see those big demonstrations against the Venezuelan government. I would say that in the case of Guaido, that he is completely unpopular, that he is a creation of the mainstream media and the State Department, and that he is getting every day more unpopular. And it's very difficult, every day more difficult for him to mobilize people to the street to supporting him. And it's something that we see very clearly in the last demonstration that he was calling 2 weeks ago. Even if you think that just a few days ago, there was a huge demonstration of the militias. The militias is not the army, the Venezuelan army. It's the people on arms. It's our women that are dedicated to the house, homemakers, mothers, grandmas, uncles. It's the people in the common people in arms, ready to defend the country. When she sees those pictures that were of that big event that took place just 2 days ago, with thousands of people, and President Maduro is talking that it's more than 2 million militias in Venezuela ready to defend the country, plus the army, of course.
Well, and to be clear, what they're ready to defend the country against is the this ongoing drumbeat from the United States that that military intervention is not off the table. So what they're saying is they're willing to defend themselves against the United States.
Yeah. They're willing to defend. This is something that is product of the circumstances. The country needs to defend itself, and it's as I said, they have mentioned that it's around 2 million people in arms, and we are talking about common people. That's something that you need to think. Especially for those that are talking about the unpopularity of Maduro in Venezuela, when he is able to arm more than 2 million people, and those people are ready to defend the government and to defend the country and not to attack the government. That means that it's not as unpopular as the mainstream media in the United States is talking about.
Well, but I know you and I spoke the other day, and one of the things that I was amazed is that you talked about, while there is a number of people, a substantial number of people who are lined up with the opposition party, not even all of those guys necessarily support this puppet, Juan Guaido, who's been put up. So even the opposition party is not fully aligned behind Guaido.
No, in fact, they are very divided. It's a very small group, the most radical group, the most ultra right-wing group that is followed behind him. And it's a group that is getting more divided with time. This is a person that is completely, it's not really a politician. He's initiated. No one knows him until just January, even in Venezuela. So for most of the Venezuelans, it was difficult to pronounce his name because he was an unknown person in the country until January.
Well, and part of the reason that he does have support is because there was such a successful campaign in terms of getting the United States and some of these other countries to to stand with him. So there's probably a fair number of people from the opposition party who say, "Oh, we'll use him and then we'll dump him as soon as we can get rid of Maduro." So there's even some of that false loyalty that has been generated. Now, but I do want to say there's no question that Nicolas Maduro does not possess the charm and the charisma that Hugo Chavez did, and there's no question also that because of the efforts of the United States and some of this elite class of Venezuelans, that people are suffering, and so there probably has been some weakening of the support for Maduro specifically. But those people who are, even some of those people who are complaining about Maduro and his ineffectiveness in terms of pushing back against this, those people still aren't supporting Juan Guaido or even the opposition. They just think that they just long for their beloved Hugo Chavez.
Yeah, that's true. The people, a big number of people are trying to save the Hugo Chavez legacy, and they're defending the legacy. But at the same time, a lot of people understand that in this moment of crisis, President Maduro represents the sovereignty and the independence of the country, and Juan Guaido represents just the new colonialism, represent the Washington consensus, the submit to the desire of the corporate interests of Washington, D.C. And people are clear in that. So that's why, despite all the economic warfare that has been developed by the United States against Venezuela, still Maduro's in power, and still he has millions of people on the street defending the government.
Well, so I want to break it down specifically now. You're Venezuelan. You've been to Venezuela. You just returned recently, and so it is your firsthand impression that today the majority of Venezuelans are still in clear support of Nicolas Maduro.
Yes, there are a lot of contradictions. So I think that I said that before. There are a lot of contradictions, but people understand, as I said, that the independence and the sovereignty of the country is defended by Nicolas Maduro, not by Juan Guaido.
Now, how much? How is the support from
in percent? That's something that changed constantly. But I will say that at this critical moment, the United States has been attacking with Venezuela without masks, openly, publicly. I will say that the majority of the people are behind President Maduro. I'm saying more than 50%. And the moment the United States is not attacking directly and openly the government of Venezuela, I would say that those numbers can be decreased. But right now, because all this virulent, visceral attack against Venezuelan people, most of the people understand what's going on and what's happening. And most of the people are, supporting the government against the USA intervention. No one in Venezuela, even the right-wing people among themselves, they don't want a USA intervention. More than 85%, that's the poll says in Venezuela, more than 85% of the people don't want a USA intervention in Venezuela.
Wow.
So,
well, and see, those are the numbers that the mainstream media just refuses to put out there. Now, I wanted to talk something else. You mentioned about how involved the State Department is in this essentially this coup. One, by the way, that they thought would be over in a couple of weeks. They honestly thought by endorsing and saying that they no longer recognize Nicolas Maduro and that they were now recognizing this Juan Guaido, who was never elected, for anything even close to being the president. He wouldn't even be the backup. It would have gone to if they could make a claim that Maduro was somehow illegitimate. There was still a vice president. I mean, it's absurd. But just a week and a half ago, they actually the United States assisted in changing over the personnel at the consulate in New York City. I mean, and that's something. Again, there's no way that Juan Guaido could have possibly pulled that off. That's the United States that came in there and forced people out and changed the personnel.
Yes, Yeah, that happened in the Venezuelan consulate in New York City, together with the police department of the New York City and the State Department officers, that they took the Venezuelan consulate. But at the same time, they have been trying, for example, to take the Venezuelan embassy in Washington, D.C., and they have been unable to do it because it's all every day full of people, of USA citizens that are concerned of what really is happening in Venezuela, and they are living inside of the USA, of the Venezuelan embassy in Washington, D.C., because they said that that embassy doesn't belong to Guaidó. That embassy belongs to the legitimate government of Venezuela, of Nicolás Maduro. And they have been trying to do that for more than a month, to take over the embassy. And then for them has been impossible to do it.
And where's the rest of the international community that should be outraged that the United States is messing around with these consulates and these embassies? I mean,
that's something that is, that's something that should make the international community completely angry, because it's something that has not happened before.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same that the idea that the United States can be fooling around, doing whatever they want without respect any international law, is something that people should get around angry, and people should confront the government of the United States, because we are getting close to that completely chaos, because this could be happen to any other country.
Well, and here's something that again, you want to talk about hypocrisy. Here you've got Donald Trump threatening Honduras and Nicaragua and other Central American countries, telling them you can't allow people to leave your countries and seek refugee status. They're telling them specifically, you can't allow people to leave your country, and if you continue to allow people to leave your country, we're going to first of all, we're going to take off any financial aid away, and then we'll consider sanctions, and we'll take actions. Can you imagine the United States telling someplace like Cuba or Venezuela that you can't allow people to leave your country? I mean, the hypocrisy is just incredible. I mean, at the same time, the United States is complaining about this immigration issue at the Mexican border. Let a little boy float up on shore coming from Cuba, and they grab him like he's the prince or something. It's incredible the contradiction that the United States has created in how they'll look at a country like Venezuela and how they'll look at some of these places in Central America.
It's completely horrible what the Obama administration, for example, did against Honduras. They organized a coup d'etat in Honduras, and then they have been imposing different presidents over there.
Yep.
Even they saying the AOS has been mentioned that the last election in Honduras was completely fraudulent.
Mm-hmm.
That situation has created economy, a big number of economic difficulties for people in Honduras. When they try to come to the United States, they have been rejected, they have been attacked, they have been expelled, they have been persecuted, just because they are trying to escape from their own country that has been plumbed in poverty thanks to the United States policies in their own country. That is something completely cynical from the United States government, and it's something that they have been doing all over the planet. You can go to your country, destroy your country, but you don't have any right to come to the United States to at least escape from the poverty that the United States have been creating in your own country.
Absolutely, absolutely. Look, my guest today has been William Camacaro from he's Venezuelan. He's a Venezuelan activist. He's the co-founder and coordinator of the Alberto Lovera Bolivarian Circle of New York. He's an artist, radio host here on WBAI. He's an activist in New York City, human rights activist in general. He's a senior fellow at the Council for Hemispheric Affairs in Washington, D.C. And it's been just a great to have somebody who's got the firsthand knowledge on what's happening in Venezuela today, not just from a decade ago or 2 decades ago, but somebody who is Venezuelan, so they can they don't have to look at Venezuela through the same kind of lenses that these white reporters go down and see them as. I want to ask you, as we close out here, what is the most clear and important message that you would like listeners to know about what's happening in Venezuela? I mean, if you could make one comment, what bit of information would you like to share?
So I just want people to know the people in Venezuela are suffering, and in a daily life. For example, public transportation is a mess because the buses, the cars doesn't have parks because it's very difficult to buy parts for cars over there in Venezuela. And there is a big problem for daily life, for simple things that you should not be facing any problem. Venezuelan people are facing those problems for transportation, for food, for electricity now,
Medicine.
for water, medicine. All those problems that Venezuelan people are facing has been created by United States. But despite that, Venezuelan people are committed to continue the revolution.
Well,
I think that American people should understand that and to support the will of the Venezuelan people.
Well, William, I want to thank you for joining me. I'd love to have you in studio. This is a special broadcast of Let's Talk. This is a pre-recorded show, but I'd love to have you come in studio and we can go through this and update as this whole scenario unfolds. Again, I want to thank you for joining me and being my guest today.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right. Again, that's William Camacaro, who is Venezuelan, and he was kind enough to join us today. Hey, look, I do want to mention that again, we do have a campaign at WBAI. We're going to go into fund drive mode here in a couple of weeks. So I do want to mention that even before that, we're trying to raise as close to $10,000 as we can to finish our studio build out, our brand new studio that we're building out. That faces the street, larger studio, something that's going to be more attractive for our webcast, for our Facebook live streams, but also it's called More Than Mics because it isn't just microphones. There are other sound equipment. There's other things that we need to buy. We're actually building the studio large enough so when I, for instance, bring in a guest who plays music, we'll have an area that they can actually perform in. We're going to have a much broader table with mics and mic feeds for multiple guests. It's going to change the look of WBAI, and it's going to change the sound of WBAI. But we need your help. So we're trying to find 200 listeners who will donate at least $50 to this specifically More Than Mics campaign. And again, you can go to give2wbai.org, or you can dial our pledge line at 516-620-3602, and just mention that you want to do contribute to the More Than Mics campaign, and they'll direct you exactly what you have to do to do such a thing. So that's what I'm pitching that before we even get into the fund drive. And again, I want to thank you, William Camacaro, for joining me. No Shawnee this week, as you can tell. I'm actually doing this show from my own studio back on the Seneca Nation territory in Western New York, and Shawnee will be hosting a show next week without me, and then of course we'll be back to kick off the spring fund drive after that. I want to thank everybody for listening, for again being such an important part of the show as you guys are, and again, thank you for listening to Let's Talk. This is John Kane for Let's Talk. Thank you. Yahweh.